Hi, this is my fourth attempt at trying to record this video. The first time I went through the whole thing and ended up just taking a picture of myself because I had the camera on instead of the video. The second time I started coughing during it and had to quit. And the third time I said two words wrong and didn't even notice, which changed the whole meaning. So maybe the fourth time is charmed. I hope so. In the beginning was the goddess. That's right. The biblical tale is a travesty. It's a distorted and false representation of the ancient myths. Most of us adore our mothers, and this is natural. Mother went into the valley of the shadow of death for us. She sacrificed her body for us. She provided her own sustenance to bring us into being. She gave us her blood, wherein is life. She supplied for us the breath of life. She birthed us through water and blood. She is life, for without her we couldn't be born, and then after we were born, we would die. We eat and drink her so that we might have life. We partake of her body as we nurse from her sweet manna, and we love her because she first loved us. Mothers have been venerated since time immemorial, and with good reason. Therefore, when humans began to search for a creator or something to worship, their first thought was that a goddess had created the world and deserved their veneration. And why would they think anything different? The ancient Sumerian goddess Inanna, from at least the 4th century BCE, was known as the bright morning and evening star, or Venus. She is mentioned with all the early gods. She had many temples throughout Mesopotamia and was also later equated with Ishtar, Astarte, and Aphrodite. Goddesses, as well as women, were at one time respected and acclaimed. Sadly, men couldn't handle that for long, and they and the gods took over. And not only did they begin to rule, but they denigrated the goddess and the human female. In a recent discussion on Tartarus, I talked about the marriage of the god of the sky and the goddess of the earth, or the marriage of the deity and humans. But we know, according to the Bible, that the first union between the god and humans was broken. Early on, God and humans were separated by sin, which brought death. And the main focus of the Bible then is reunification of heaven and earth, or ending the separation or the death, and getting back together, which is life. We can't have life without the union of the male and the female. This story is told in various ways. The union of the god and the goddess, the union of man and woman, and the union of the god with humanity. Unfortunately, in some of the mythical creation stories and creation and separation stories, including the Bible's, the woman, the goddess or the human female, is blamed for the separation, while the man, the god or the male, is praised for the reconciliation. Thus began the subjugation of the goddess and the woman. In the biblical account of creation, the gods created the first man and woman. The word God in Genesis 1:1 is plural. But this creature the gods formed was only one being, with male and female aspects in the one body. We understand that concept because we recognize a Godhead. The Father, Yahweh, the Mother, the Holy Spirit, and the Son, Jesus, as being one person, one being. This was also the situation with the male, female that Yahweh created. It was one being. In Jewish mythology, Yahweh put the combined Adam to sleep and separated them. In Greek mythology, Zeus ripped apart the first couple. So as we see, the separation of the male and the female here was actually caused by the gods. But this is not the story we were handed in the Bible to explain the horrific human condition. The Gnostics believed that not only Adam and Eve were once one, but that Yahweh had a female counterpart. Hebrew inscriptions from as early as the 8th century BCE mention Jehovah and his Asherah, Jehovah Shomron and his Asherah, Jehovah Teman and his Asherah. The authors of these inscriptions recognized a god and a goddess, Jehovah and his companion Asherah, and they sent blessings in the name of this couple. Again, we also think of the Holy Spirit as the female aspect of Yahweh. The Spirit that moved on the waters in Genesis 1:2 was, according to Jesus, his mother. He stated, "Even now did my mother, the Holy Spirit, take me by one of my hairs and carried me away to the great mountain Tabor." This is in the Gospel according to the Hebrews, chapter 4, verse 1. Although it's not included in the canon, this gospel may have been written as early as the 1st century CE, and it's the only one mentioned by the early church fathers by name. Jerome mentioned it in his commentary on Ephesians 3, and there were other frequent mentions during the first 5 centuries of the Common Era. The Kabbalistic Jews referred to the female aspect of God as Shekinah, and Christians call her Sophia or wisdom or the Holy Spirit. Gnostics believe that Sophia fell from grace because she wanted forbidden knowledge. Sound familiar? The Jewish Zohar links the loss of the Shekinah with Adam's fall, as Adam chose to worship only the Shekinah, or the female, of the Godhead. Thus we have heaven, God or man, God and man, and earth, goddess woman, separated and in a struggle for supremacy and also to get back together until that can happen, until they can be reunited. The Gospel of Philip clearly regards this separation as death, and this death was to end when the man and woman were reunited. This Gospel relates, when Eve was still with Adam, death did not exist. When she was separated from him, death came into being. If he enters again and attains his former self, death will be no more. The Gospel of Thomas has Jesus saying, when you make the two into one, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male nor the female be female, then you will enter the kingdom. This, of course, explains the biblical idea that Christ's union with his ecclesia, or church, is the end of the death curse, and that within his kingdom there is neither male nor female, but the two have once again become one. So because of her supposed overreaching, Sophia, wisdom, the Holy Spirit, or whatever we want to call her, was exiled to the earthly realm. We see even Jesus returning to the heavenly sphere and sending the Holy Spirit down to dwell with humans on the earth. And yes, the English versions of the Bible might refer to the Spirit as he and him, but in the Greek the word also means she and her. Sophia, or the Spirit, always longs to return to her divine source. Even some Jews believe that the eventual reunion of the male and the female aspects of God represent the restored order. And all Christians believe that the eventual or present union of God and humanity represents the restoration of humanity to Yahweh. The New Testament certainly bears this out in several ways. Just as Uranus, god of the sky, came down and sat on Gaia, goddess of the earth, so Jesus, god of the sky, has or will come down and dwell on the top of his earthly kingdom, the ecclesia or church, forever. And that is the end of the separation or death, as the male brings reconciliation to the two after the female causes the separation. As I said earlier, Zeus ripped apart the first couple, but because he was in a hurry, he left a small piece of the woman stuck to the man, leaving a hole in the woman. Naturally, this small piece always wants to return to its home. Again, we have a longing for home, for unity, for our first bliss, and the notion of a God is natural, earthy, and physical. It has to do with life and its continuation. An old myth that the Hebrews probably knew because it's older than their creation myth was that children's flesh was made from the mother's blood, and their bones were made from her ribs. The Sumerian name for the goddess who oversaw childbirth was Ninti, which means Lady of the Rib or Lady of Life. In the Mesopotamian myth, man, Adamu, was made from woman's rib, while in the Jewish patriarchal myth, woman was made from man's rib. Now, Gnostic literature has Eve making both Adam and Yahweh. No matter which of any of these stories we might believe, we can see that the problem we face is one of separation of the male and female. Because of the Dark Ages, which was around 500 to 1000 CE, and the burning of any document that went against the prevailing religious thinking of the time, we have very little information about the rule of the goddess. Eventually, patriarchy took over, causing men to push aside the goddesses for the harsher gods. The goddess was then declared to be a demon, a witch, a hag, or a crone, or she was humanized or turned into a fairy tale creature. And if she was humanized, she was probably absorbed into a patriarchal myth. At that point, not only were the goddesses subjugated, but so were women. The Israelites continued to honor some women like Esther and Judith, but once Yahweh conquered the gods and goddesses of the Middle East and had become the one and only God, men took over and managed his religion. The goddess cult was supplanted. This is the story of the Bible, a separation mainly because the woman desires knowledge and equality, and then a reunion as the female, women or the church or the goddess, submits herself to the male, man, Yahweh, or Jesus, as her head and allows him to overshadow her and dwell on top of her. And it was, of course, put together in its present form by men. The female thus forever lost her place of honor, as even in the reconciliation she remains subject to the male human or the male deity. It's hard telling what amazing and beautiful stories we might be able to read to gain knowledge about life in ancient times if Christians hadn't destroyed everything that didn't fit with their particular views. The Bible and its subsequent sequels has caused untold misery and death and destruction to countless women as well as men. And I hope that soon and very soon, all Abrahamic religions will go the way of Sumerian, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman mythical religions. By that, I don't mean that I want some new belief system to take hold and its adherence to burn old documents. I simply mean that it would be very nice if this devastating myth would lose its destructive grip on the hearts of men and women, and especially children. Thank you for watching. Bye.